And welcome to the Knowing Show. I am your host, Christine Marie. I am so glad to be with you all this afternoon. I am in sunny LA, although it was a little cloudy as I drove in. Yesterday I was getting my rental car and I decided to pay for an upgrade for a convertible because I have my motorcycle license. I don't ride hardly ever. And actually, I don't think I've ridden a motorcycle in probably 4 years. So it's been a while, but I love the visceral feeling of the wind in your face. And so I got my rental car yesterday and drove to LA and just watched the sunset it was about an hour and a half of just watching the sunset. And then the stars come out above me. And it was invigorating driving through California. And now today we are talking about how to get to know yourself. And for those of you who are new to the Knowing Show, I started going live in June of 2025. And my goal was to do it through my birthday. My birthday is at the end of July. And as I started going live and as I started just doing the routine practice of showing up every day, I realized I was hosting the show and having guests on with me. So it was an amazing vehicle and kind of excuse to get to know folks and have meaningful conversations. And as we started talking, the more I realized that there were frameworks embedded in what I've come to learn over the years, particularly around knowing. I was in the 5th round of editing my book, but I hadn't really crystallized and formalized frameworks at that point. There were a few, but for the most part, it was a lot of experience and experiential learning, which was so helpful, but it wasn't couched and structured into frameworks. And so as I started going live, and talking with guests, but also my commitment was to go live every day. So there were many days that I went live by myself, such as today. And over literally almost the entire year, so we're closing in on probably at the 300-day mark, I'm sure, of going live every day. Yeah, we have to be, because June 23rd is less than 60 days from now. And y'all, it was really, really cool as I started sharing, just consistently showing up, doing the thing which I knew I was supposed to do. It was so much, it felt like it was for my sake that I was going live and just started this show. It was for the sake of discipline, keeping my word to myself. And as I talked with others, as I shared solo, frameworks kind of came about, and the 1, 2, 3 steps. And here's 5 different practices that I've implemented to really get to know who I am, or here's 5 steps that I implemented in the process of vertical alignment. And so it really was meaningful over the last year to have this show and have a place and a container, I guess you could say. I like to call it the arena. You know, the arena, it's very much so akin to Theodore Roosevelt's speech that he gave in 1914 called The Citizens in the Republic. And in this speech is this section dedicated to what is notoriously known as the man in the arena. And it's this concept of you and me going into the arena day after day after day and doing the work and falling down and getting our faces marred by dust and grime and getting back up and doing it again. It's the people who know what it tastes like to have both triumph and defeat. And we know everything in between. And frankly, there's a lot of reticence towards entering the arena these days, especially in this society. You know, culture talks about self-preservation and self-protection more than most anything. In fact, we talk a lot about boundaries and having people that we keep at an arm's distance because they're challenging for us, rather than how do I engage my mind, body, soul, spirit, and develop resilience, develop control over my mind, body, soul, spirit? How do I ensure that I'm letting things go and not so easily annoyed so I don't need as many boundaries? And how do we actually truly come to take radical responsibility for ourselves? Sure, maybe boundaries coexist alongside that responsibility, but starting with responsibility first and foremost, to look in the mirror, to take full account of our part that we play, the part that we contribute in our lives to the experience that we have. For so much of the time, we assign blame to everyone and everything around us. And actually what catalyzed this conversation today was this morning's show. So we've been going live every day since June 23rd, 2025, but I started a second show January 1 of this year, 2026. And in the morning, we're going through a book called A Course in Miracles. And it's just a daily lesson for the whole year. And it has just a quick blurb, but then, follow up paragraphs for us to just kind of dive deeper into what the meaning of the lesson holds. And this morning, we were talking about something that kind of inspired me to have the show this afternoon titled to what it is. And let me go back actually to the paragraph that we read this morning that we're referencing throughout today's show. Your mind must give the world meaning, and what you behold upon it are your wishes, acted out so you can look on them and think them as real. Perhaps you think you did not make the world, but came unwillingly to what was already made, hardly waiting for your thoughts to give it meaning. Yet in truth, you found exactly what you were looking for. Y'all, this concept is that effectively what we experience is what we're already expecting, what we're already thinking about, we're already anticipating it. We're creating what we experience in so many ways. And not always by any means, but for so much of the time, what we experience in the world around us is a reflection of what we think, what we value, how we see the world. And so if we're expecting to encounter beautiful, wonderful people, that's probably going to be our experience because we're actually coming in with that expectation. And thus that frame and that energy, and people experience that from us, and they see our smile, they see our radiance, and then they match ours for the most part. They'll match our kindness. But if we're coming in suspicious, kind of looking around, brooding, maybe we are actually afraid of what might happen, we're probably not going to have the same reaction versus if we came in heart wide open and excited to meet people. And same thing goes for the quality of effort we put into a project. Are people going to match our effort? The same way we lead, the way that we show up, we can never expect our employees to outperform or outwork us. So the level to which we set for ourselves is so often matched by those around us. That's kind of the law of attraction. And so to this point of what we were talking about this morning, you're experiencing in the world around you that which you're creating in so many ways. And so we're not just stumbling into this world around us and acting as a victim. It says, perhaps you think you did not make the world, but came unwillingly to what was already made. And there's this victim mentality in today's culture, and I've experienced it for myself. It's a temptation to step into that where it's, look, oh poor me, look what's happening. And all of us have this opportunity to choose, am I going to be the victim most days? And so the alternative is the accepting of radical responsibility to go inward. And there's this concept of there's a massive log in our eye, and we've got to take that log out in order to see clearly. And that concept is very poignant in most every area that we might encounter. And so on the Knowing Show, we talk about the four intelligences: mind, intellect, emotions, our soul, spirit, and our physical body. And those four intelligences are really the ones that we're looking to bring to the table every day. I think of it as kind of like our board of directors. Each one we need to give a seat at the table. Each one we need to welcome to, hey, come tell me what you know. Tell me what you're bringing with you from yesterday. Tell me what you're bringing with you from over the years. Tell me what you know and what you're intuiting, and let's talk about it and then make decisions accordingly. And so today, as we're talking about this whole concept this morning of we're not stumbling into the world, we're creating it. And what we see and what we experience is a reflection of kind of what we're actively creating, even though we don't really realize it all the time. Then the question is, okay, well, if I was to take a step back, how would I actually get to know myself to begin with, to understand what I'm creating? And a lot of what happens inside of us is underneath this like layer of subconscious. It's like there's this film over our body that we're not able to access so much of what's kind of on autopilot. Like there's just all these default behaviors and all these default responses and all these subconscious narratives that we're not even aware of. The first part of emotional intelligence is the ability to be aware, and then you continue on, but it's to be aware of our emotions. And then from there, it's then we understand them, then we control them, then we convey them, and then we engage interpersonally with empathy and with wisdom. But we can't handle those interpersonal relationships with empathy and with wisdom if we don't first know how to convey our emotions, if we don't first know how to control our emotions, if we don't first understand them. And ultimately, it is based in our awareness of what's going on inside of us. And the only way to be aware is to start being conscious. It's like shining a spotlight into the dark crevices of our soul and be like, hey, what's going on in there? We've had the lights turned off for so much of our life because each one of us has a different reason for why we might have turned the lights off. For me, I viewed emotions as weakness for so much of my life. And so this question of why are we having the lights off for those different parts and kind of regions of ourselves, I actually would love to hear in the chat if you all are willing to answer. We'll get to this here in just a minute, but for so many of us, we were taught to prioritize one intelligence over another, maybe two. But our mom or our dad or whoever our caretaker was prioritized a particular intelligence. And then that translates to us to value and put an overemphasis on the cultivation of one or another. So I'd love to know here in the chat, if you all are willing, I'm going to jump in here and say hey to everybody. If your mother or your father emphasized one or the other. So I'd love to hear if you guys are up for sharing. For example, my dad definitely emphasized the intellectual intelligence. He really, really put most of his attention and energy into his work. And that shows up in the way that he runs his business. We've got he was the third generation. My great-grandfather started a painting business in Maryland in 1922. My dad's third generation, I'm fourth. So he spent a lot of his time, effort, and energy into that. Now, my mom, she was overly emphasizing the spiritual intelligence. And that's how she raised us. She really, really raised us to have a deep value and respect for our spirit and our relationship with God. And so I would love to hear what you all think in terms of how were you raised? What were you raised to honor? And y'all, this is why it's important to ask this question of yourself and for me of myself, because otherwise our values are based in something that is actually we're not aware of. It is deeply subconscious. So just for context, I was running a mastermind and I was speaking there, and I had everybody write out what their goals are and the current health of their businesses based on those goals. So like, where are you today and where do you want to be? And then I asked them to give it a score. So they ranked, okay, I'm ranking 8 out of 10. And I know where I need to go and where I need to get to in order to achieve this goal. That's what they deemed as success. And then I asked them to consider, is that goal, that metric of success, was that yours? Or was that what was given to you and assigned to you by your parents or by your boss or your partner? Who gave you that metric of success? Y'all, nearly every single one of these entrepreneurs who is incredibly successful, all having $1 million businesses plus, every single one of them realized that their definition of success was not their own as it pertains to their business. It was inherited. It was something that was given to them by other people in their lives. So for us to know, oh, I have this inherent value system of how I see the world from either mom or dad in these categories. Okay, now I know that. Now I at least understand where am I starting from, because there's no way that we can move forward with clarity and with intention from here on out if we don't even know our starting line. So before we keep going, we're going to jump into the knowing framework, which I'm really, really excited to discuss with you this afternoon. But before we do, I just want to jump here in the chat. Okay, Pa, good to see you. Tom Ganley, hello. Anton, hello from Czech Republic. I'm so glad you're here. Prime Rays, good to see you. Goober, hello. Charles, thanks for joining. Jimmy. Martin, thanks for coming. Zola, hello from Indonesia. I'm so glad you're here. Aaron. He says, wait until you're 50 and find out so many people weren't who they led you to believe they were. Terry, hello. Good to see you. Jimmy says, just keep putting love back into the universe and it will come back. Harish, I'm so glad to see you. Oh, thank you so much for being on here. Wow. You just really encouraged me. Thank you. 18 Maborn, hello. Gunner, hello. Gray Tone, I'm glad you're here. Afros, hello. Matt, good to see you. Bearded, good to see you. On the Knowing Show, we talk about the human intelligence. So it's a cultivation of you and me. We really do live in a world where there's so much emphasis on artificial intelligence and so much money being poured into that. And as a result, so many people are losing their jobs. And man, it's like, what then are you deriving your meaning from if all of your value was derived from your work and from your job and your identity was what you did, not who you are? So on the Knowing Show, we do talk about knowing who we are and knowing our mission and why we're here and frankly, how to live in accordance with the greatest potential we can. The goal is that we're in the arena here, like Theodore Roosevelt talks about in his speech from 1914. We do the work and then we go out and make impact. And then we come back and we do the work and then we go out and make impact. It's like the exercising and mental and emotional gym. Because we go to the physical gym. Why do we not do that for our minds and souls? Chibu, hello. Good to see you. 99, hello. Thanks for joining. Yes, Gray Tone. I love that. I will answer your questions, so ask good ones. I won't know the answer always by any means, but it raises good conversations. So it's more like discussing your questions. JC, hello. 54, hello. The CMDR, hello. Code, thank you. Thanks for joining. I love this. Mark says we should accentuate the positive and eliminate the negative. Man, it's so funny, Mark. I was just thinking about that yesterday. It was so funny. Y'all, it really is so true. What we think about, there's this concept of you shall know a tree by its fruit. So what is the fruit in our lives? What does our external behavior say about our beliefs? And there's such a direct link between our behavior and the beliefs which we hold. So let's go ahead. I am just coming back to, just scrolling down one last time to finish out these comments. Daryl, hello. Good to see you. Robin, thanks for joining. Inder. All right, y'all, we are going to dive into, we're going to go ahead and dive into the Knowing Framework, which I'm really excited to discuss with you guys because this framework is what I ultimately kind of stumbled into over the last 4 years. When my husband, I was married for 8.5 years. I got married when I was 20. So I very much so was like a child bride. And when my husband left, I was 28 and it was so devastating. And I had this moment, so it was 5 summers ago. And I see it now so clearly in my mind as I look back on it. My little puppy Zeus was out in the backyard. He was like snapping at bees, trying to catch them with his mouth, which I don't recommend. And I was chatting with a counselor, and I really knew, I just knew I was at this crossroads in my life where if I did not take responsibility for every part that I had contributed to the marriage failing, even though he was the one that left, I just knew I would live as a victim my whole life and I would blame him and blame everybody for why my life wasn't going the way that I wanted it to. And so I was talking with my therapist and I just felt like there was this moment where I felt like I looked in the mirror And I saw myself for the first time in my life. And what I saw was that I had been living as a non-person for 28 years. Everything I said, everything I did, every part of the way that I showed up in the world was in reaction to what other people wanted, to what other people needed. And I think that this might be an ailment across both men and women. But the thing that's so dangerous about that is that at the end of the day, we're finding our meaning in what other people are saying and thinking about us. And I am fundamentally externally sourced. I'm hooked up to everybody around me and looking desperately for everybody to give me approval for why I am and who I am. And so in that process of looking in the mirror, so to say, I really came to spend time with like, okay, well, who was I created to be in the first place? Because what I realized is that we've got our innate nature of who we were created to be. And then there's layers and layers and layers of nurture that have been added on with every environment that we were raised in, every environment we were put in, like going to school every day, every environment that we spent a bunch of time, such as with extended family. Our nurture adds these layers and layers and layers upon our nature and kind of the integrous, authentic individual that you and I were. And then the nurture adds layers. Now, that doesn't mean that each layer is bad by any means. Yet, if we want to know who we are, it's kind of akin to Michelangelo when he was asked, how did you sculpt David? And he said, well, I removed the layers of who David was not. So in order to know the integrous nucleus of who we were created to be in the beginning, it's like, okay, let's remove the layers of our nurture. That doesn't mean we throw it all out with the bathwater, baby with the bathwater. But what it does mean is that we take the time that we do the scaffolding work to chip away at the layers of the expectations, the layers of the narratives, and the layers of the experiences, and the layers of the nurture that accumulated over time that we're all buried beneath. And again, we're not throwing it away. It's almost like just put it to the side and examine who you and I are. And so just quickly before I move on, I just wanted to jump here in the chat. Who asked this? Do you regret Goose Hunter? Hello. Says, do you regret getting married so young? I don't recommend it. I don't recommend it. And I think I did the best I knew how then. If going back with what I knew, I would have made the same decision again. And I think that that's so important for all of us. When we look back at different points of our life that we maybe wish had gone different, or that we're not happy with how it turned out, to go back to that age that we were, given the information that we had back then, I think so many of us did the best we knew how. And frankly, even that concept of, for my parents, the way that they raised me, it's like, I think they did the best they knew how. And so that doesn't mean that the pain that was caused by whatever decision is nullified by any means. What it does do is that it gives compassion for that 20-year-old girl who got married at 20. And it gives compassion for everybody that was around me, encouraging me to get married at 20. And we were all doing the best we knew how. And so now, as I look back, I've actually needed to go back and really be gracious and gentle, because, man, I was so judgmental of that 20-year-old girl for a long time. And I was really angry at her. I'm like, I was just thinking, how could you be so stupid? How could you be so stupid? How could you do that? But that judgment that I was giving that 20-year-old girl was actually, it was doing some real damage to me internally, where I actually couldn't really trust myself as I was trying to heal in this process of, it's like recovering a trust relationship with you and me, where if we're so judgmental over the decisions we made when we really genuinely did the best we knew how, when we were 20, 18, 25, 30 even, well, then how can we trust ourselves today to make the decision based on the best information that we have? It's immobilizing otherwise. So to recover a relationship with ourselves, it's so important that we go back to those core moments in our lives where we did make decisions, or those formative experiences, and actually tend to that person who made the decision with the information that we have today, and still extend grace. I think that I love the example of a parent extending grace to their child, even after the child made a big mistake. That's akin to the type of grace that we need to extend to ourselves when we made that decision in the first place. Because the way we treat ourselves in the past and look at ourselves in the past, we inevitably are going to be looking at ourselves the same way today and even in the future. So there's a lack of it really, I think that concept of it immobilizes us is really, really important because it really stunts our ability to be creative, to have freedom to try new things. Because if we're so judgmental over who we were in the past, well, then why would I ever be daring and bold today? I think that's part of, wow, I've never thought about it this way. Maybe that's part of what makes children just be so uninhibited and so free is because they have nothing to judge. They have no past self to condemn. Once we start condemning ourselves, we start layering on top over and over and over layers of judgment, now layers of condemnation, layers of shame. So we were talking earlier about understanding who we are we uniquely made to be in the nucleus, our nature, and then layers of nurture were piled on top. But then we start putting layers on and assigning layers ourselves. Judgment, shame, judgment, and adding in, now we're contributing to the layers and layers. Because here's the thing that's so wild. We now are nurturing ourselves. It used to be our parents. It used to be our environment. It used to be school. That was the nurture in which we were raised. Well, now we have a new nurture today. We still have a nurture. So we now no longer can blame the past. We ourselves are the caretakers of our mind, body, soul, spirit. So what's the nurture that we're creating? What's the environment in which we're creating every single day for us in which we show up? So back to this whole concept from this morning, do not think that we just arrived in this world haphazardly and we're the victim of it. We are actively creating the environment in which we find ourselves. Our home, the way we decorate, the way that do we listen to music? Do we wake up and work out? Do we wake up and doom scroll? Do we go to bed late because we're doom scrolling? Are we having meaningful conversations? Who are our friends? Who are the people that we're aligning ourselves with in terms of values? How do I choose to spend my Sunday? How do I choose to spend my Friday night? Every single one of those decisions is accumulating and adding to the sum of our lives. So going back to this concept of kind of waking up, I realized over that I guess you could say period of time, there were 3 questions that ended up, which is, who was I? Who were you before you really started being able to take control of your present? So who were you in the past as it pertains to you as a little girl and the core or little boy and the core moments that happened in your life? So if there was let's say 8 years old, there was an experience that happened to you that was either traumatic or it was just something that was really unpleasant. And then maybe you were 12 and another experience happened. And then you were 15 and another experience happened. Each experience that had an emotion to it that didn't go through the process of being examined or looked at, ultimately that emotion or that experience wasn't processed. That formed a belief system about the world. Even if you did process it, but it was under the guise of, oh, now I know I can never trust anybody. Well, that's now a belief system. That's now a narrative through which you take action and live your life according to that value and to that belief. It's a belief that formed for me at 9 years old was, it's me and God against the world. That was a firm belief. And that narrative continues to come up for me unless I consciously put another one in its place and say, you know what, I actually don't believe that anymore. That's no longer true. A lot of the narratives in the past are no longer true today because we have a completely different nurture. We have a completely different environment in which we find ourselves. We're no longer children beholden to our parents. We are adults living on our own and living in maybe even in relationship with other people. Maybe we have children of our own. But if we're still internally operating as those little kids, man, we're making decisions as a 12-year-old would rather than updating that program and updating that narrative to reflect the environment in which we find ourselves today, backed by now 50 years worth of data versus 8 or 12. So this first question, who was I, is the first question of the knowing framework. And it allows for us to examine key moments in our childhood that really were formative. They shaped us somehow, some way. It had an experience to the effect that it caused us to now have a mindset around the world that shows up today. And it's not just a mindset around the world, it's a mindset around ourselves. It's a mindset around God and other people. So who was I is the first question. What were those key formative moments, key formative experiences in childhood that turned into a mindset through which we now address the second question? Well, who am I? How does that moment, that memory, that experience show up today in the present? How does the past show up in the present moment? And so understanding the through line of, oh my gosh, that moment when I was 12 led to this narrative, and this shows up for me today practically in this moment in the way that I relate to my husband or the way I relate to my child, neither of which I have. But it's really, really important for us to understand this is the memory and this is the manifestation of it. This is how that shows up for me today in the way that I show up with the people I love, my job, the way I form my emails, the way that I talk on social media, what I pay attention to, what I consume, where I spend my Sundays, where I spend my Friday nights. All of that is influenced by these early childhood experiences that formed belief systems around the world. And so not always are we living according to this subconscious narrative. The only time we're not is when we have intentionally brought the subconscious into this state of being curious about it and being like, oh, what do I think? What do I believe? Is that still relevant today? Is that old narrative, is that old belief system still true? Is that mine? Do I think that? Or is that something that I was told from the pulpit at 12 years old? Now, the third question here. So how does the past show up in the present? It's the moment and memory of the past that shows up in the manifestation of the mindset through action. So rarely do we ever hold a mindset or an approach to life without there being a physical action accordingly. So those are the first two questions. Who was I? Who am I today? And then the third question, well, who do I want to be? And this is really, really where we step into this position of, man, I'm going to create this new way of being, this new way of existing in the world. I'm going to create a new narrative, a new belief system. And I'm going to not say that the past gets to dictate who I will be for the rest of my life. And this really is, man, this is freedom. Because for 28 years, I lived as a non-person in so many ways. I really, really did. And I lived very codependent. And the very first time that I experienced what felt like freedom to me, I remember I was on a plane actually to LA. So I'm in LA right now for a National Association of Women in Construction. It's a very long title. But I'm here for an event for them. And so I was flying to LA in 2022, right after my divorce. And I was like, what is this strange feeling? I was having this weird physical sensation in my body. And I was like, what is this feeling? I've never felt this way before. And I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm happy. I don't have to take care of anybody. Like no one's emotions are tied to me. I'm free. But here's the thing that's crazy. Nobody ever asked me to do that in the first place. That was all something that I inherited from watching, observing. There were some things told to me when I was a kid, but nobody said, by the way, the emotional health and emotional well-being of our entire family rests on you. That was my internal interpretation of my role in my family. But that was something that I took beyond my family. I took it into my marriage. I took it into my workplace. I took it into every corner of my life, because a belief system is never isolated to one metric or to one isolated area. Our belief systems are not compartmentalized. And so in so believing that, I was forever kind of enchained. I was always in this cage of people pleasing. So to have that kind of freedom, to create something new, comes with close examination of the past to then say, okay, well, what does freedom look like in the potential of what could be. The present moment is just the link between our potential and the past self. And so this is where we do the work right here, right now, is where we actually analyze, well, what am I bringing with me from the past? What do I want to undo? Who was I? Who am I today? How is that showing up? How is that manifesting in terms of the mindset, in terms of the actual actions that I take, the decisions I'm making today? But then who do I want to be? What does freedom look like? Because there's no way we can just say, oh, I want to stop doing this action, or I want to stop believing this. We need to put something in its place. Otherwise, it's going to be this vacant void that anybody can fill unless we fill it with intention. So it is our responsibility to, yes, examine the past, but also put something new in its place. Because if we don't, not only will something else fill the void, but we will likely end up repeating history. So if we just say, oh, I want to stop doing this behavior, but we don't create a new target, we're going to do a 360 rather than a lateral 180 change. So that's the knowing framework. Who was I? Who am I? And who do I want to be? And y'all, taking that down to so many specific areas of life, because you can take it and apply it to, okay, what are the mindsets that I hold? What are the views of my soul? So taking it from the emotional perspective, how do I view relationships? So many of relationships are tied to emotions. Do I even know how to do relationships well? What is my current understanding of emotions? I viewed emotions as weakness for so long. So then when I exhibited emotions, sometimes the very link and, extending of the hand that allows for relationships to form connection, I damned that. I damned that extension of my hand reaching out to offer help or to receive help. And so therefore I cut off relationship with others at my knees because I had so much of a poor narrative around emotions. Also, what's the narrative we have around money? What's the narrative we have around professional success? Like I said earlier, I was teaching a mastermind with a lot of these very successful entrepreneurs, and every single one of them, their goal for their business was something that they did not set. It had to do much more so with their parents' expectations of them, and they were in their 60s. So many of us are living our lives according to someone else's expectation of us. So we get the opportunity to re-examine and apply intention to the lives that we're living. Just jumping back on here in the chat. Exec, I'm so glad to see you. Exec New, good to see you. I'm glad you're here. Victor, hello. Paxton, I'm glad you're here. Rasta, hello. All right, I am going to jump on YouTube so that we can take some action where folks are causing disruption in the chat. All right, let's see. Gray Tone, can you just give me a couple names? I'm watching here, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for you watching out. So I'm just going to hide everybody who you called out here. For those of you who are new, we do have a troll problem. Matthew says, do you do private therapy? Gray Tone, I love you. You just said Christine is available for consultation. Contact her email. You're so wonderful. Thank you so much. I will say I'm not a therapist. And if you're asking if I participate in private therapy, I do go to therapy. And I also do one-to-one working with folks who want to, because this is what I believe. I believe every single one of us has the ability to do the work on our own, but it's so helpful to be doing it in relationship with somebody. So I do both. Man in the hat, or Gray Tone, you're wonderful. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead, Shine Box. I'm going to go ahead and remove you just for some of the older comments. All right. All right. 18 Ma Born says, how many children do you have? I don't have any children, although my darling has 2 boys, so I might be mom at some point. Victor, you cannot workshop yourself into a real connection with someone. I completely agree. I 100% agree it takes 2 people to have a meaningful relationship. And I really believe that it's so, so, so hard to have a meaningful relationship with someone who is not doing the work on themselves. So I will say that. Goose Hunter, man, what a question. Is childhood a kind of curse of adult life? Oh man, what a beautiful question. It's just it's quite profound. And y'all, man, I think childhood is a picture for us of our nature. So we were talking about, I'm so glad you brought this up. So going back to that aspect of removing those layers, so many layers, and it's not removing and throwing them away. It's rather removing the layers, kind of setting them aside and analyzing, oh my gosh, who was I created to be in the first place? Who was this little kid? Who was, going into the chat, who was the gray tone? Who was Dexter Johnson? Who was Johnny Ross? Who was Run to Dreams? Who were you before the world told you who to be? Who your parents told you who to be? Who your baseball coach told you how to run, how to slide, and they're yelling these things like, I remember I was playing softball and one of the coaches yelled something to all of us on the field, and it was just so derogatory. And it just made me feel like crap, And these adults are telling us children things about us that stick with us for the rest of our lives, because any person that says you are blank, if it was negative, that has and holds a power over us. It really, really, really does, until we learn how to be able to let go of those comments. But for so long, as we have not done the work to intentionally create new narratives around who am I truly? Who was I created to be? How does God view me? And I'm bringing this up because I do believe we were created. And so I believe that each one of us was created uniquely and created beautifully. And so the question is, whose voice do we trust? Do we trust the voice of everybody kind of around us coming in and trying to say who we are? Or do we trust the one who created us, who knows us better than anybody? And then that's the baseline. And then once we understand, man, I actually, looking back at who I was as a child, and y'all, this is a fun exercise to go back. I think my internet is failing. I think I'm frozen. Am I frozen? Okay, I think I'm back. To go back to your childhood, look at pictures. Look at pictures of who you were as a kid. How did you show up? How did you engage with the world? And really, really look at who you were. Were you funny? Were you loud? Were you brave? Were you ostentatious? Were you witty? Were you easy to make you laugh? Were you clever? Were you mischievous? Who were you? And at what age did those parts of you maybe stop being so vibrant? Or at what age did those parts of you stop showing up? Because we all have those. We all have those moments where little parts of us maybe died. And so us knowing, oh man, I remember who I used to be. And then understanding, oh man, and then that's when it shifted. I can look back at pictures and realize, oh, that's when I had that light in my eyes. Oh, this is where my light diminished and kind of dwindled down. And you can see it when you get excited. So look at those pictures. Look at the pictures of who you were at 6, 5, 4, 7, and look at those ages and who were you in those photos, and then kind of track the progression of when did something really hard happen? When did something else really hard happen? And then just kind of watch as you change in the pictures. Another kind of way to remember who you were innately created to be is, where do you get lost in the moment? Where does time stand still and you just are like infatuated? You're like infatuated with your life and with whatever you're doing, and you're just so caught up. That usually is a really good, I guess you could say, kind of like whisper into maybe the real authentic you. Y'all, it's so easy for us to focus on who we're told to be rather than who we truly are. So with that, y'all, I'm so sad. I need to jump off. Tony, I'm glad you're here. Joseph, Sandra, hello, Wildman. Thank you, 18 Marborn. I'm glad you're here. Matthew, Sam, thanks for joining. I'm going to put some folks on timeout, but I do need to jump off. I'm so bummed. I have a meeting here. So y'all, thank you so much. Oh, code 001. You know what? Let me put my email in here. If you guys do actually want to, let me go ahead. I feel nervous doing this. Go ahead. Here's this one. There's my email, code 001, if you want to send me a note, but that's there. I'm just scrolling back up in the chat, and then I do need to get off. Isabella, I would love that. And actually, the gray tone, if you, I would love a moderator. I was actually thinking about that, the gray tone, as you were kind of answering people. I was like, man, that would be so wonderful. So yes, I would love a moderator. And I honestly, once I come back from LA and finish out my week here, I'm going to be sitting and kind of doing more creation. I really want the Knowing community up and live by the end of June. So I would love, and be so grateful if you guys are willing to kind of get involved and help. Because I just am so passionate about this, and I feel like we could do really wonderful 9 a.m. Eastern to 6 a.m. PST, and I will see you all tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.